Hi, everyone. Most of you know who I am. NAHA is opening for positions for board members. Jade is running for president, and Denise is running for vice president. I really like them a lot, and I like what they do. I'm going to ask each one of them questions, and start with you, Jade. So tell us about what you have done in your life so far and then bring it to present time.
I've served as president of NAHA in 2002 to 2005, and then I think 2012 to 2014, maybe January 2015, because I resigned to go to get my master's degree at the Maryland University of Integrative Health. That aromatherapy has really been pivotal in my life, and even 35 years later, I still am madly in love with it, I guess one could say. Yeah. I now have instructors in different countries around the world, from Indonesia, Vietnam, Russia, Hungary, the Ukraine, Argentina. I don't want to forget anyone. Bulgaria. And then I just developed the classroom space. This was a kind of a pole barn, and I converted it into kind of a kitchen space where I make my herbal oils. And then it's used for classroom space. We have student cabins, bathhouse, showers. So I have held a couple of retreats here. So I'm kind of moving in that direction. You know, I have a big interest in aromatics and mental health. So I just feel an autobiographical writing kind of merges well with aromatics for emotional, psychological well-being. So that's kind of my next movement for the school, for our retreats here at the farm.
So,
Thank
Denise,
you.
so talk about my favorite one, Herbalist Without Borders, that I got very deeply involved with, and mostly because of what you do with it.
I started volunteering with Herbalists Without Borders in about 2014, I think. And one of my first projects volunteering with, was to redo the website. And I started volunteering in a few other ways. And during that time, I started doing work in my community. So we grew herbs and flowers all summer, and we took them to the food pantry, and we made bouquets every week. So we would I think we took 900 bouquets to the food pantry in that one summer, because people would, it makes you so happy. It makes you feel good. The beauty of it, the smell, it was like aromatherapy in living plant. Then I realized people were interested in growing, so I would start doing seeds. And so all of this is what led me into Herbalists Without Borders, is to find ways to do this type of work on a bigger scale, because that really opened my eyes to how much need there was and how little there was to help. Food pantries are incredible. They do amazing work. They get so much food to people. But when you start looking at that, it's like, well, people don't have access to wellness or preventative health, or, all of these herbs are really expensive, So when Herbalists Without Borders, I had been volunteering for a while. And so when Gigi said, I'm stepping down, would you be interested in volunteering as the executive director? I said, sure. And that completely changed my entire life forever. And with that, when I first started with Herbalists Without Borders, there were only 40 members. The budget was like only a few $1,000s. And it has grown to the point where now I have about 1,500 square feet of my home is dedicated to Herbalists Without Borders. I have I have a palette of essential oils that are recently that I have not unloaded fully yet, and carrier oils and things that have been donated. But so much, I have so many suppliers now come to me and say, this is all going to go in the garbage. Do you need it? And so, we work to try to get all of that here and then redistribute it. But honestly, Herbalists Without Borders has, 650 members now. I ship even to other countries based on what we can do. I send shipping giant buckets to Africa that go on. I get different charities to donate space on their shipping container that they're sending to Africa. And they'll let me put one of those giant like rain barrels that can be sealed so it protects everything. I've even sent computers to Africa so that they could do consultations with clients and type in their recommendations and print them out. I've sent every single herbalist, American Herbalist Guild magazine and every single aromatherapy magazine to Kenya so that everybody can read and get more education. We have a lot of work to do to try to get some of these supplies. And so right now I'm working with doing a mentoring program where people can gain clinical experience and clinical hours. So that, because a lot of people go to online schools and then don't, live where they can do that. So if people can volunteer for Herbalists Without Borders clinics, we're creating protocols and a training program so that people know how to set up a clinic, what supplies do you need, what kind of forms, what kind of, what kind of waivers, how do you set this up, what types of programs can you do? It's important to volunteer in the community of aromatherapy and herbalism. I think, I have a lot of nonprofit experience. I went to the University of Milwaukee just for nonprofit management. And have done grant writing, and I'm a Virgo. If that tells anybody, I'm very organized. So with things like that, I know that it's important that we all share our skills, because it is really important that we continue to develop our profession. And so I work on presenting at integrative medicine conferences, on working with physicians, on working with medical practices and different types of clinics, because I think it's really important that that we have the research, we have the education, but that we also know how to use it. By building our reputation, our visibility, and our profession, then we can have doctors who refer people to us for that portion of the care, because they understand what herbalism and aromatherapy can be and how it can be a part of a care plan for someone. And for us to do that, being a part of organizations like NAHA is really important, because we all need to work together to make sure that we continue.
And I just think it's an important thing to devote some time to. And one of our goals is to hire an executive director to take over the day-to-day operations, to move the NAHA office so that it's kind of independent and separate from the board. Setting NAHA up to have an executive director in a separate office kind of opens up the field to more people, whether they're older or younger, running for office, being, participating in the governance of the organization.
What you're saying is, what do you want to do for NAHA?
Top of the list for me is that all professional members, level 1, level 2, level 3, have equal rights within the organization. It's something I've advocated for. Another thing that's really important is term limits. The vast majority of nonprofit organizations have term limits, and they're there for a very specific reason. And one is to continue board turnover and giving more members the opportunity to step forward in leadership roles, to bring new energy, new ideas. There is, when a board just serves forever, or for a very long time, there's what's called like board blindness. Like they just, begin to see things in a very narrow viewpoint. NAHA specifically is a nonprofit organization. It is owned by its members. And so I feel like loyalty should always remain with the membership and not with the board. And that feels like kind of what can happen, is that people think, oh, this board, I just am familiar with them. Like, I don't want things to change. And yet change is exactly what needs to happen, just to give life to an organization where members have served for a really long time. And then along with bylaw work, I think having some operational priorities, I'm very interested in having a kind of more transparent financial reporting to the membership. Members really deserve kind of in plain language where the funds have gone, where their membership dues have been spent on what, how our employees are being paid, just overall members should be very well informed. NAHA puts a fair amount of money into research, anywhere it could be from $4,000 to $60,000. I can't remember. Maybe actually the highest amount was just under $40,000. And it's always gone to just one research facility, and the research has been phenomenal. There's NAHA members all over the world doing research who could potentially benefit from having access to research funds. And then I've already mentioned hiring an executive director. I just think that's really important. NAHA is large enough and has the income to have an executive director and to relocate the offices to really remove them from any potential conflict of interest with board members. And I just think that's a really important thing. So all kind of my ideas is simply to protect NAHA's future and for sure open the door for kind of that younger generation to come in and move the field into the direction.
Agree with everything you said. Denise, you want to add on
Sure.
your role as vice president?
Yeah, the vice president's role is to support the president, most importantly, because, when you're working with an organization, it's always good to have two minds, like I was saying, collaboration, working together, having different thoughts or opinions, and being able to rely on someone else as well, I think is really important. And, with a few things like what Jade mentioned, like modernizing governance, one example that I can share is GuideStar is kind of an industry standard where nonprofits receive a rating like a silver, gold, or platinum. And the reason that they have GuideStar, a lot of people won't donate unless your nonprofit is on GuideStar. And GuideStar requires financial transparency. How much are your board members being paid if they're also employees? It requires how many people do you have? What do they do? What are your financials? How often are you disclosing this important information? Do you have a conflict of interest policy? Do you have any of these other policies that the IRS doesn't just suggest, but pretty much, they give you a little option, but it really isn't optional. And so with GuideStar, that type of thing and annual reports to the members, I think are so critical because it's not only about, it just proves to other people outside of the organization that we're trustworthy and financially transparent, but it holds an organization accountable to its members. And that's really important. Everything that we do is, we're talking to the members because the members are the owners. It's not the board that owns an organization when it's a nonprofit. That's why we have voting, because the members are the owners and the members select. And then also doing things like a digital footprint or a digital, assessment of what technologies are being used right now. And then what is needed by the members. I know I try to upload my continuing education credits and there's no button. I log in and it sends me to a page not found page. So there are little things like that might be making our members frustrated.
I do want to speak to the website, but the underlying system of NAHA's website is actually still the same. And that's what is creating the problems. And so currently, according to the 990s, NAHA is spending anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 on IT, but it's possible through a completely updated website, because it does need to happen, and make it more functioning and easier to find an aromatherapist in different states or different countries.
When you go to I have EU credits that I have not been able to put up for over a year.
So
because I have the same problem. If you go to put them up, it crashes.
It's not there.
So I just gave up.
that functionality is, would be easier if it was a new site. This
Mhm.
was a question we talked about in during the annual general meeting. And I don't feel like it was properly addressed by anybody because, the first response might be, well, it's expensive. Yes, it's expensive up front, but long term, it reduces expenses considerably, especially right now looking at IT costs, which are very high for the size of NAHA as an organization. So I am interested in seeing where money can be freed up to devote to members, especially in today's economy. I think a lot of members, business owners, practitioners, product creators, makers, all need more support from the organization and highlighting their business, talking more about what an aromatherapy practitioner does or looks like and supports people, and visiting an aromatherapy. I just feel like this is part of the energy that needs to be renewed, and kind of a commitment on behalf of the organization to provide support for its memberships. NAHA represents all of us, so I know for me, as in a leadership role, I want all members to feel welcome, honored, and respected. So yeah, I think it's an important part of the organization's role. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why bringing everyone together and being united and being positive and working as, collaboratively, as not only as a board, but as an organization, listening to people, getting feedback, being open to new ideas or suggestions. All of those things are signs of a healthy nonprofit organization. And so that, I think, is really what we hope we strive for, is to unite our community, and make everyone be able to express their passion, in the way that they see
and feel like they
need
belong
to.
and they can share
Right.
their voice. Yeah,
Right.
totally. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.